Media.
The Florida Theater presents Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass live in concert, performing in commemoration of the 60th anniversary of the Whipped Cream and Other Delights album. Wednesday, January 14th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets available at floridatheater.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, ready to fire your HOA? A proposed law could make it possible. We ask an attorney what it might mean for you and take your calls and questions. Then, after losing his father in a plane crash, a Jacksonville filmmaker embarks on his own solo flight halfway across the planet. We'll tell you why. And a new artist collective unveils its inaugural lineup, from classic Motown to Britney Spears. Join our conversation. You can reach us on air by calling 904-549-2937, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org to find all the ways to connect with us and sign up for our new daily newsletter. It's all ahead this hour.
I'm Corva Coleman. Fresh demonstrations are set for this morning in Minneapolis after an ICE agent shot and killed a woman yesterday. Protests erupted after that killing. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says the woman was striking the ICE agent with her car and that the ICE agent fired in self-defense. NPR has reviewed multiple videos of the scene. In the videos reviewed, the officer does not appear to be hit and can be seen walking after he fired the shots. Meanwhile, Illinois Democratic Congresswoman Robin Kelly says she will introduce articles of impeachment against Secretary Noem, alleging Noem has compromised public safety. The House is expected to vote today to restore subsidies for people paying for their health insurance premiums under the Affordable Care Act. The House plan extends these subsidies for 3 years, but the plan is unlikely to pass the Senate. NPR's Sam Greenglass reports a bipartisan Senate deal is gaining support.
For weeks, House Republican leadership refused to allow a vote on the subsidies. So 4 swing district Republicans joined with Democrats to force a vote using a maneuver called a discharge petition. A procedural vote yesterday attracted support from 9 Republicans. Boosters of the subsidies have hoped that success in the House would recharge bipartisan negotiations in the Senate. Here's Republican Senator Bernie Moreno of Ohio.
So we're in the red zone, but that does not mean a touchdown. It could mean a 95-yard fumble.
The emerging Senate deal would extend the subsidies for 2 years and allow people in the second year to opt for funds in a health savings account instead of a subsidy that goes to the insurer. Sam Greenglass, NPR News, Washington.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has called a special session of the Florida State Legislature in April. He wants Florida lawmakers to redraw the state's congressional map. From member station WUSF, Douglas Soul reports.
President Donald Trump has been putting pressure on conservative-led states to redraw maps to add Republicans to Congress. DeSantis says he wants Florida to wait for a U.S. Supreme Court ruling on a Louisiana case that could change how race factors into the process.
I have a very high degree of confidence that at least 1 or 2 of those districts on our current map are going to be implicated by this Supreme Court decision.
But Florida's House leadership wants a new map during the state's regular session, which starts next week. Republicans currently have 20 of 28 House seats. Democrats say the effort only boosts Republicans ahead of the midterms. For NPR News, I'm Douglas Soul in Tallahassee.
Pennsylvania Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro says he is seeking re-election. Using his favorite phrase with an epithet, Shapiro says he's gotten things done. Shapiro is also considered a potential Democratic presidential contender for 2028. This is NPR.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It is 9:04. Neptune Beach has lowered the cost of parking after raising the rate last fall to help keep its beach's town center shopping area clean. The reversal is a reaction to a recent drop in parking and merchant revenue. City council members were told that parking usage is down 7%. Colleen McGregor told the council that the parking situation is hurting the restaurant where she works.
We have seen a huge drop in customers, our returning customers. Quite a few of them have personally told me at the door they will not be coming back to our restaurant because of the parking.
Last year, the council increased the cost of parking at the city's 253 spaces from $2 to $5 an hour after 5 p.m. daily. But members voted this week to change the fee to a flat rate of $2.50 from 11 a.m. to midnight. Council members say they will revisit the parking issue in March. Crews have started installing overhead flashing crosswalk lights at 3rd Street and 3rd Avenue South and 3rd Street and 7th Avenue North in Jacksonville Beach. The pedestrian-activated warning lights are designed to make it safer for people to cross the busy roads, and the project also includes road resurfacing plus sidewalk, bicycle path, and drainage work. The nearly $2 million improvement project is expected to be completed by this summer. Once the fog burns off, it'll be warm. Highs reach the upper 70s to near 80 degrees. No rain in the forecast. Overnight, dense fog expected to develop again, with lows dropping down into the mid to upper 50s.
Support for NPR comes from the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org. And Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Plane crash. But first, whether you've lived in or rented in a condo, master planned, or single family home community, almost everybody has an HOA horror story.
This is a fight that's almost lasted a decade between this Air Force veteran and his homeowners association.
His HOA is suing him over a flagpole.
A Jacksonville man says he's simply spreading a spiritual message, but his homeowners association says he's breaking the rules.
Now there's a legislative proposal that would allow communities to abolish their HOAs. Here to discuss it, we are joined by real estate lawyer Barry Ansbacher, and we should note Ansbacher Law is a WJCT underwriter. Barry, thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Ann. Thank you for having me.
Well, we'd also like to hear from you if you have ever had a conflict with your HOA or if you've served on an HOA board, a sometimes thankless job. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email comments or questions to First Coast Connect at wjct.org or go to firstcoastconnect.org and find all of the other ways to connect with us. So, Barry, about a third of homes nationally have an HOA, but that number is actually a lot bigger in Florida. More than 45% of homes in Florida have some sort of governing body, whether it's a condo association or a homeowners association. How did these associations become so prevalent in the first place?
Well, when you had a large community with a golf course or amenities or such like that, it was always common to have a homeowners association. But what really changed things were really the regulation of stormwater. And obviously in Florida, flooding and stormwater is a big issue. So Florida has water management districts, which are government agencies. There's one for each region of the state. In North Florida, it's the St. Johns River Water Management District.
There's about 5 around the state.
I believe so, right. Yeah. And they're tasked with making sure that these stormwater ponds and drains and pipes and systems are not only just built to prevent flooding and also to control water quality because the pesticides and fertilizers and everything that you put in your yards eventually makes its way into the river and the ocean. So the idea is both to prevent flooding and to maintain the water quality. So it's an important task. But what happened is the cities and counties decided they did not want to be responsible for maintaining these systems anymore. And when you think about it, they maintain most roads are public roads, for example, and they maintain those roads after the developer builds the community and other facilities. And of course, we have the JEA for water and sewer and electricity. But for whatever reason, stormwater was something that the cities no longer agreed to accept responsibility for. And therefore, the Water Management District rules and regulations said somebody's got to be around to do this because the developer sells the homes and then they move on. And so they started requiring in the 80s that any community of any size where you have a stormwater pond, which is pretty much everything, has to have a homeowners association. So there's an entity that has a revenue source, your assessments, and a management to maintain those ponds and systems. So once that became the law, then even smaller communities that in the past would not have had a homeowners association, they might have had a voluntary civic club, but the idea of a taxing authority with assessments, that became almost ubiquitous. So all the new communities after that date were required to have an association in order to get their permitting.
And so that's the origin story of HOAs, how they became prevalent. How did they become so problematic? As we mentioned, they're the kind of thing that you hear people, everybody has an HOA horror story. There's, a woman who in Hillsborough County spent a week in jail because of something that started with complaints about her brown lawn, and her homeowners just, ultimately it turned into a kind of a contempt of court charge, but she spent time in jail because of something that started with a dispute with her HOA. Holiday decor, you always hear about veterans being told to take down their American flags. How did they become such a sort of despised entity?
I certainly recognize that they have become the poster child for the memes and the social media generation. There's a whole bevy of social media channels of HOA horror stories, but I'm going to push back a little bit because I represent hundreds of associations throughout Florida. And I think a lot of what is being called an HOA problem has really become sort of the bigger civility. And you see that whether you're boarding on a plane and people can't sit next to each other without, the stewardesses intervening into what becomes physical altercations. You see it when people are in any public space of just being kind and civil to each other. And the HOAs are just people. They're just neighbors. And that same lack of civility has unfortunately made it into that arena as well. So I do recognize the perception, and I've certainly seen problems with HOAs in terms of governance and behavior, but I don't think it's unique to other aspects of our community life.
We were talking a little before the program started about the fact that it is a bit of a thankless job. It is something that people essentially have to volunteer to do. There are laws that govern their behavior. There are potential ramifications if they don't do what they're supposed to do legally. And they often are facing a lot of pushback from their own neighbors. It is not like serving, as you said, on a nonprofit board where you sort of get to bask in this volunteer work that you're doing. It often is something that creates anonymity or even, targeted retaliation.
It certainly is. And a lot of people don't really think about it, that these associations are essentially the most local form of local government. The HOA directors, whether it's a condo or a homeowners association, in either case, they are selected by the community that they live in. So a lot of times when people come to my office and complain about the governance, that the board is not acting properly, my first statement to them is, why don't you run? Why don't you get involved? And of course, most people don't want to do it. So what happens is when you retreat from serving, who is going to serve? And it really is a thankless job. And not only are they not getting paid anything, they're typically meeting regularly once a month. They are subject to not only civil liability, but criminal penalties have come into place. And as you said, it's not even something that you're volunteering and you get thanks from your community or neighbors as they go to walk their dog. and get accosted for everything going on in the community. I can't tell you how many board members who tell me that they walk their dog at 4 a.m. because that's the only time they can do so in peace. And it's unfortunate, but the good news, I think, is like most things, you hear about the horror stories, but in our experience, the vast majority of the communities we work with, we have good people who are willing to serve as directors. We have good professional management. And I like to think that at least our firm is giving them good legal counsel. And so when you have those instances, those aren't the ones you end up on the news or social media because they're making intelligent decisions and they're acting properly. But you certainly are going to hear about the bad eggs. And I'm sure we'll get some calls this morning from people who have unfortunately had bad experiences.
So those complaints have prompted essentially what is House Bill 657. It's called the Homeowners Association Dissolution and Accountability Act. It was introduced by South Florida Republican State Representative Ron Porras. Let's listen to what he had to say about it to our news partners at News4Jax.
I think it's time we have the conversation if homeowner associations are really needed. In my opinion, they act more as a failed experiment. They're a quasi-elected pseudo-government that have more power and are entitled to more rights than I think most cities and counties do.
So, Barry, tell us what this bill would do, just in kind of the nutshell version. What would this bill provide for?
If this bill passes, and of course the legislative session starts January 13th, so they're just going to get started really just around the corner, then what the bill does is really two different things, really three things. One is it requires that every association that is created be subject to Florida laws as they're enacted in the future. For constitutional reasons, most associations are subject to the laws that are in place when they are first created and recorded, but subsequent amendments don't affect them. So that's the first change he makes. The second change is if you have a petition by the members, then there has to be a vote of the membership to terminate the association. So it doesn't terminate them. It would require 2/3 votes of the community, and then there would be a termination and a receiver appointed. The problem that you have with that is it would probably be unconstitutional for the vast majority of associations because essentially covenants are a contract between all the current and future owners. And constitutionally, you can't take a law that dissolves it or even provides a mechanism to dissolve it where the contract or agreement was already in place. So they're going to have challenges with that if it did pass. And finally, for the reasons we talked about the water management district, one of the requirements in every set of covenants I've worked on since the 80s, it specifically says you may not dissolve or terminate this entity without the approval of the St. Johns River Water Management District because they want to make sure there's somebody there who's going to take it on. So what I think Representative Porras is overlooking is the issue of who's going to take that unfunded mandate, because I don't foresee the city of Jacksonville or Clay County or these other communities taking on that burden without a revenue source. And remember, this is the same session that we're talking about rolling back property taxes, which is what local government primarily relies upon. So somebody's going to have to pay for these services.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to real estate attorney Barry Ansbacher about a proposal to allow homeowners to abolish their HOA. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937, or you can email First Coast Connect at wjct.org with any comments or questions. We have a call from John on the South Side. Good morning, John. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I appreciate the conversation and educated discussion. In the last several years, there have been a variety of these sorts of proposals addressing issues with the HOAs and COAs, and one major one was the assessments or the architectural reviews that were required for the condos, and the concern of getting necessary repairs done on them. I wonder if this would affect the COAs as well as the HOAs. And there was also essentially the Homeowners Bill of Rights put into place to deal with some of these egregious errors or issues with the evildoers on some HOA boards, because obviously there have been and some members put in prison. or charged with felonious activity. But as you're noting with the water management district and these potential unfunded mandates, what happens potentially with condominiums where over the last several years bills have been passed to have these things inspected and deal with these architectural issues so that we don't have condominiums just falling down?
Yeah, John.
I appreciate the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, John. I appreciate your call. I mean, this does apply to condos, but to John's point, there have been a lot of additional requirements put upon condo associations in the wake of the Surfside collapse, in terms of maintaining assessments, making sure they have enough revenue on hand to do structural upgrades if needed. So I ask you about that. And then also his question as to kind of how the Homeowners Bill of Rights does or does not help prevent some of the wrongs.
Okay, so first, I think a lot of times there's confusion between the condo and HOAs because they're very similar in a lot of ways. They're where people live. You have associations that do assessments and have certain responsibilities, but they have always been governed by a separate set of laws. So the Condominium Act and the Homeowners Association Act have always been separate chapters. And from legislative focus, it always seems like for a year or two, the legislature focuses more on the condo side of the world, and then they'll come back and focus on the HOA side and go back and forth. And so it's sort of a staggered approach. So a lot of times the laws that will apply for condo will come a couple of years later for HOA and vice versa. The focus of this legislative session is really HOA. I haven't seen the same level of activity on condo, and there's a reason. Because our own Senator Bradley from North Florida really took the lead in dealing with the Surfside issues and the safety of multi-story condominiums. And that was a huge legislative priority 2 years ago, and then they did a cleanup bill last year. So I think it's kind of shifting the focus this year to the HOA.
So, I mean, the condo associations are mentioned in this bill in terms of, getting rid of some pre-suit mediation requirements and stuff like that. That's a part of this. Is that not the case?
I think that this bill has mention of the Florida Condominium Act, but frankly, I think it's really just a typo when they did the legislative drafting, because if you read it, it says every homeowners association created after January 1 has to agree to be subject to the Condominium Act. So I really just think it's kind of a big typo, but it's certainly in there.
But if they were to remove a condo association in the context of something like this, what would happen to those requirements that were established under Senator Bradley's oversight?
I don't think that this law is going to have any effect on condominiums, with this caveat. A lot of times you have these very large communities that have a homeowners association, which we call a master association, and condominiums within the community. And that, for example, let's say you have a community with private roads and amenities, and you may have 100 single-family homes in one street, you may have 3 condo associations on the other, so it might indirectly affect them. But the impetus of this bill really is homeowners association. You brought up the third aspect of Representative Porras's bill, which was basically to get rid of the private dispute resolutions other than for elections, which are currently handled either by mediation or arbitration procedures. And I think they've been very effective, the mediation, and to have a separate division in the civil court systems to handle these disputes.
He's proposing actually creating an additional court system of oversight.
Right. I don't think that's a really workable solution, because at the end of the day, the problem is not a matter of whether you have access to courts, because my firm and others handle these things in front of the civil justice system. At the end of the day, though, you only have so many judges, so much capacity, and whether it's a separate court system or not, there's still the expense, especially for homeowners, of hiring lawyers and dealing with that process.
I want to get to some questions. We have a call from Eugene on the north side. Good morning, Eugene. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, all. I appreciate the topic. Quick question. We, in our community, have a gentleman that wants to come out on his lawn each Sunday and with a karaoke style box, the speaker and the microphone turned up kind of loud. And numerous people have asked him to tone it down some, and he feel like we're dealing with his free speech.
Is he singing or what is he doing, Eugene? What is he doing when he's out there?
He's preaching.
He's preaching. Okay.
Yeah, preaching. So, you know.
Are you in a community does your community have a homeowners association?
Yes. You know, a couple people have, you know, asked him, you know, the neighbors asked him to turn it down and, you know, why is he doing it? And his response was, that's his free speech to be able to do that. So,
and have you asked your homeowners association to intervene? I'm just trying to get clear on your question.
Well, yeah, our president has politely talked to him, and, you know, our management company, you know, they approached it in a polite manner, and I submit a letter of complaint to the city nuisance.
Okay, gotcha. I got you, Eugene. Let's see what Barry has to say.
I think Eugene really brings up an important thing. There are a lot of benefits to living in a community with the homeowners association. This is a good example. Remember, when you purchase a home, one of the things you should consider is your home in a homeowners association or not? And a lot of people purposely want to be in a community that has restrictive covenants, that has a homeowners association for the reason Eugene speaks about, that in a home or neighborhood where you don't have a community association, you don't have covenants, whether you can prevent somebody from having the neon pink home or the person who's disturbing you on a Saturday or Sunday morning, exercising their free speech and waking you up, is really not going to be subject to much regulation because the city nuisance laws are relatively limited because of free speech and just because of resources. So one of the things that you do have the ability to do in the planned community is there's more control, and it goes both ways. A lot of people say, I sometimes call it the association golden rule, all the rules should be strictly enforced against my neighbors and none against me. But the truth is that you do get benefits by your controlling your environment. And if you're willing to subject yourself to those rules and regulations, it also means your neighbors have to. And I'll give you a good example. The tree ordinances a couple years ago, the legislature severely limited the ability of local government to protect trees. And so if somebody has an arborist in a outside association and they can basically just chop trees down willy-nilly, well, if you're in a homeowners association, that association's covenants can prevent that and preserve that tree canopy.
Sure.
So there's certainly a lot of benefits of being in a planned community. And I know the focus tends to be on the bad acts that certain associations do, but a lot of times you don't hear about homeowners who misbehave or who bring down the neighborhood and destroy the quality of life of their neighbors. And that is one of the benefits of an HOA.
I do want to talk more about the benefits in just a moment, but we've got a question, Lori, on Facebook, or a comment saying, perhaps if they had stuck with just taking care of the stormwater systems and staying out of the lives of the homeowners, there wouldn't be a problem. And Robin on Facebook saying, I've never understood why anyone would buy a condo or a home in an HOA when they're not willing to follow its rules. So sort of two perspectives there. I mean, one of the questions I have is sort of who came up with these rules? The idea that you're going to you take care of the streets, you're going to make sure that the pickleball court is maintained. That all sort of makes sense. But then you get into these kind of granular level, like you can't drive your work vehicle into the community. If it's got a logo on the side, you can't park it there. You have to have this certain shade of greige, to paint your house. I mean, so where did all of those really nitpicky rules come from? Because it seems like those are the ones that get under people's skin the most.
Well, what happens is I'm laughing a little bit because I sat there when they're being created. So if somebody has 50 acres and a developer buys that property, they sit down with planners and decide where the roads are going to be, where the ponds are going to be, what the neighborhood look and feel is going to be. And one of the things that they do is they sit down and the developer sits down and says, okay, what do I want the restrictive covenants to look like? And as the person who wrote you on Facebook said, yes, you certainly could have said the only role of this association is going to be the stormwater ponds or the roads and nothing more. But most developers want to protect the look and feel of the community because they're going to be developing it for years. And a lot of buyers want to buy in a community where the yards are well maintained, where the mailboxes are not falling down, where the homes are not looking like every shade in the rainbow, but have a certain uniformity. And that increases property values. The number I've heard is in a planned community, property values are typically 20% more than when you're outside of a gated community.
Okay, I've seen HOA homes, a study from George Mason University that said more like 5 or 6% in terms of resale value, more than homes outside of a HOA.
And that may be the difference whether it's gated or not gated
Gotcha.
versus HOA not. But in any event, there is certainly a perception that the market, the buyers, which is who the developer's appealing to, that they want a certain level of quality and community. So when we sit down with the developers, I sit down there with a checklist. Do you want no dogs? You want 3 dogs? You want 5 dogs? You want 6 cats? And so a lot of these things, which may seem arbitrary to some extent, they are because the developer's vision is the vision of that creator.
That's an important distinction,
Yeah.
though. It's the developers that are coming up with these guidelines. It's not the homeowners that ultimately take over the homeowners association once the developer is kind of done and moves on.
Correct, except what the homeowners can do is every set of covenants ever written can be modified and amended, and we work with homeowners to do that. The difficulty, I think, and maybe one of the solutions to some of the negative issues is maybe finding a way to lower the threshold. The problem is that in most instances, the amendment requires a 75% approval
Of residents.
Of residents, and just getting people to participate is hard to get that high a level. But in many communities I deal with, they go through and they change the restrictive covenants to fit the time that it comes up, because sometimes things that made sense in 1980 don't make sense in 2025.
So in terms of Robin's comment, saying, I don't understand why anyone would choose this. I mean, we noted at the outset that a lot of communities in Florida have these, nearly half really have them. And so avoiding them might be tricky. But a lot of times I feel like people move into these communities and they don't necessarily know all that it entails, particularly when it comes to fees, because they can be charged not just special assessments for capital improvements or big projects, but, fees can be raised in terms of maintenance or, amenities. Additional amenities could be added. They can be, fined $100 a day if their lawn is, not looking well. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ways that people can be charged. What kind of costs do you think how should they know? How could they know when they're going into a homeowners association or a condo association, what they could be facing in terms of additional cost on top of their mortgage?
Well, Florida law is pretty good about this, and they require on purchase and sale agreements, I think for decades now, that your purchase and sale agreement must disclose to the buyer if they're buying into a homeowners association community or a condo community and what the assessments are at that time. And that is a requirement on the seller, and the forms all include it. The issue you have, though, is I can't tell you how many buyers I've had that they, on what's such a significant purchase, they don't have an attorney representing them, and they just sign at the bottom line and they don't read it. And unfortunately, DocuSign, even though it's convenient, I think makes it worse because people scroll right down to the bottom and they click here. But if people actually read the documents or work with an attorney, they will know. There will be no surprise they're moving into a community where they have these obligations. To the point, sort of my libertarian point of view of don't live where you don't want to follow the rules. I generally believe that, but I'm also sympathetic that if you want a new home, that's pretty much not going to be an option. While there's thousands of homes in our existing neighborhoods that don't have a HOA. There are, I don't know if there are any, or certainly practically probably none available for a new home that would not be in an HOA.
Sure. I think the only new homes that are available that aren't in a planned community are essentially infill. If a home is taken down and a new one put up, or an empty lot is occupied. But you said this disclosure about assessments, and to my understanding, that's existing assessments. So what happens to somebody who moves into a community that all of a sudden the next year announces we need to resurface the tennis courts and your assessment is going to be $10,000?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an issue with it, and I don't know that there's a perfect answer to that. But I always like to remind people that the directors are not people who are just imposing all these fees. Remember, everything that the board of directors votes to charge, those directors are homeowners too, and they're having to pay it itself. So the biggest issue I see in that regard is historically developers will keep assessments artificially low to make the community more attractive. So that issue of kind of that big bump in annual assessments tends to happen right after turnover, when the homeowners get into the budget and realize that things are being underfunded. But in most communities that are not right at that turnover point, The budgets tend to be pretty stable in a well-run community, certainly should have capital reserves so that when something expensive does need to be replaced, that they've been collecting the money over the years to pay for it. But I certainly have dealt with the experience where you've had large special assessments, both in condos and in HOAs, and it does cause a sticker shock and a financial hardship, and that happens. I think that's generally the result of bad governance by directors over the years. It's usually not 1 year. Those situations build up over the number of years.
We have a couple additional questions I want to get to, but I also have a call from Linda in Orange Park. Good morning, Linda. Go ahead.
Hi. I was on an HOA board, and the good part was I was on the board. The bad part was people would meet me at my driveway to discuss things, and we would just encourage them to come to the monthly meetings. But when we read the covenants, some of the items we thought as a board were inappropriate, so we just chose not to enforce those. Things like trucks. Most of our neighbors are self-employed, so they have trucks. So some things we opted not to enforce. But what I think would be helpful for people on the board would actually be mandated training so that you understand what your role is and what the limits are. And we only had a couple of people that took it too far, and we just voted them off the board.
Linda,
so they weren't there anymore.
Did you get any training?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Barry, is there some requirement that there's training nowadays?
Right, and this is something the legislature has addressed. It's frankly very significant. Anybody, and this wouldn't have applied historically, but anybody who gets on the board now is required to take a 4-hour training session. Our firm offers them. Management companies do. The state of Florida offers them. So there's no charge, but they're required to take a 4-hour course within 90 days of being elected or appointed. And then on a homeowners association, for smaller associations, they need 4 hours of continuing education annually, and a larger association, 8 hours, which is a significant amount of training.
A couple quick questions. Briefly, Susan on Facebook saying her mom bought a condo, didn't read all the rules. Recently, there was a rule imposed that people can't park their work cars with logos. If that wasn't in the original rules, is it required to be approved by 75% of the condo owners or just the board?
It's going to really depend on the particular provisions in her association, what rights were reserved to the membership and what right was reserved to the board of directors. So that's going to be something would be unique to her situation.
Very briefly as well, our condo association board meetings, she wants to know, closed or open to the neighborhood. Those are all public.
Well, the thing about it is, and I heard the PC Edwards representative Porce, it said quasi-governmental. He's right. The Sunshine Law, which means that your business has to be done in the public, your records have to be open, that applies to HOAs and condos. It's not quite as strict in that there aren't criminal penalties for it, at least yet, but the same rights to see what's going on, they cannot approve things in the shade. It's just like local government.
So this bill has been assigned to 4 committees. It does not have a companion bill. Tell us what you're going to be watching for with this.
Well, I'm looking to see what moves. In other words, everything gets assigned to committees and subcommittees. And unless it's something that the leadership really loves, until it passes each one of these committees or stops, it doesn't even get to the floor of the chamber.
And does 4 committee assignments suggest something to you?
Yes. Typically, there's only 3 assignments, so it doesn't look like this bill, in the lack of a companion in the Senate, it seems to me it's unlikely to pass. But that doesn't mean that some of these ideas might not be appended to other bills that may be going through. There's 2 other pieces of legislation regarding HOAs that are moving. One would require a community that has an annual budget of $500,000 or more to use a professional management company, and that has a bill in the House and the Senate. So that may have some legs. And the other one that we saw is right now there's a job called the ombudsman, which is basically somebody who is supposed to help people without a lawyer, a state official. And there's a bill that is looking to maybe right now that ombudsman only helps condo association owners, and if this bill passed, it would also extend those services to homeowner associations. So there are more bills that are looking to address these concerns than just Representative Porce's.
All right. Well, Barry Ansbacher, we appreciate your expertise. Thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Up next, a tragic accident fuels a filmmaker's own solo flight halfway across the globe. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back. After losing his father in a tragic plane crash, a Jacksonville filmmaker embarked on his own solo flight. The story of his journey, both spatially and spiritually, is the subject of a documentary called Rite of Passage. Here to tell us about making and launching the film, we're joined by Santiago Triana, director of photography for the film. Good morning, Santiago.
Good morning.
We're also joined by Sydney Strymer, executive producer. Good morning, Sydney.
Hi.
And JC Dara Downing with the University of North Florida's Alumni Association. JC, good morning.
Good morning.
So this was a 5-year production that was led by the pilot and filmmaker Lee Giat. He was supposed to be here today. Unfortunately, he could not join us. But tell us a little bit about the scope of the film, Sydney, how you got involved, and just kind of the outline of the story that it tells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I actually got involved a little late into the start of the project. I met Lee in 2022, but Santi grew up with Lee. I mean, they went to high school together, and he was the one who kind of like decided to begin the project with him. So I feel like he has some good background on how it began.
Sure, Santi. I mean, we said that Lee's father died in a plane crash, and I mean, in some ways, that is sort of the origin story of this film and the documentary, a kind of tragic beginning. But how did you get involved?
So I just remember we reconnected in 2020 after we graduated high school in 2016 because he posted that he wanted to do something good for the people in South America. He wanted to spread STEM education through aviation. So this was just an idea, right? And I said right away, I was like, count me in, whatever you need. And he said, okay, can you help me film the GoFundMe video? And I said, okay, yeah. And so we went down to South Florida. Well, we were in South Florida at the time. And we met up. We did this video. And he was like, oh, this is going to be a surprise for my dad. Like, I'm going to show him the project. I'm going to be like, oh, this is for you, Dad. And I kid you not, a couple days later, he dies. And me and another one of the producers, Kaylee Powers, we had to kind of talk to Lee about how the documentary was going to change. That it was no longer going to be really rooted on only the STEM education, aviation aspect, but also on the journey of grief. And so it was a bit of a curveball, but we said, let's shift gears. And that's going to be like one of the major points of the story.
It must have been so difficult.
Yeah, especially telling your really good friend, like, hey, your dad's death is going to be a core point of this film. It's going to get real. And it did, but I think that, in honor of Nissan, rest in peace. I think we did the project justice.
I'd like to play a little bit from the trailer for the film Rite of Passage. Let's just take a listen.
I wanted to surprise my dad with this really crazy idea of using aviation to do something good, but I never got the chance to tell him.
His son Giat was killed in a plane crash in Broward County.
The family says they're still left with many questions.
It's important for me to not only continue what my dad started, I made a promise to use aviation to make the world a better place.
The mission has been in the works for several years now, and it has been a huge success so far. And now it is time to take off.
And so for people who aren't able to see that, Sydney, that last little moment where he's making a list of things to do and literally circling, don't die. There was an element for Lee and certainly for his mother and his wife to be of just concern. This was going to be a long solo journey. And while it was filmed, you can tell us a little bit about how that filming was done throughout this process when he was flying to make these STEM materials deliveries.
Yeah, so he actually bought a plane to use for the project. It's a small plane. I think it was a 6-seater, because he had to be able to fit all of his equipment and stuff in there to bring it. And then the crew actually followed along and met him in each of the places. So he started out in the Bahamas, and then I met up with him in Jamaica, and then he met up with Santi and the rest of the crew in Colombia for the rest of the trip.
And this was 6 countries in all in this flight, but it was you're counting.
It was a lot.
It was a long time ago.
And it was a while ago. I think it was like 5 countries or so, but it was a long time. It was an adventure.
And some of this was with cameras sort of mounted inside the plane that allowed Lee to kind of narrate as he's going. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. And so how did you approach putting the kind of the film together, and what does it mean to be at this point now where you really are ready for the world premiere in just a couple weeks here?
Right. Well, it's funny because with a documentary, you never really know where the story's going to go. We never knew what was going to happen at each stop that we went on. And it was difficult. It was a journey. We ran into things that we didn't even know if the project was going to continue.
What sort of obstacles did you hit?
Well, I think we want to keep that up for
that's part of the film?
A little mystery.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so this is a project, obviously, JC, of some UNF grads. Tell us a little bit, first of all, about what the involvement is of the Alumni Association in trying to platform this documentary, and just also what it means to have people in film from the school working collaboratively.
Yeah, so we are partnering with them. When they gave us the call, we immediately jumped on it. When one osprey soars, we all soar. So for us, it's more than just a film premiere. It's a chance to celebrate the accomplishments of alumni and bring the community together. So we were very excited to partner with them.
And tell us what the world premiere will look like. That is being held on the campus of UNF. Tell us when and where.
Yeah, so it will be at Robinson Theater. We will be having a VIP cocktail hour in the Talon Room at UNF, and then we will all make our way over to Robinson Theater to watch the full premiere together and celebrate Lee and Flying Ostrich Media's accomplishments.
This is Saturday, the 24th of January.
Yes.
And so if people are interested in attending, how are there tickets available to the public, and how can they get them?
Yes, there are tickets available, and the really amazing thing that Lee and Flying Ostrich Media are doing is they're donating a portion of proceeds to the UNF Foundation. So while you're coming to see the film, you're also supporting UNF, and I'll let Santi or Sydney talk about how to get tickets.
Take it.
I think if you guys just go on Google and then write Rite of Passage, Wright as in the Wright brothers with a W, tickets to the world premiere, and then it should be the first thing that pops up.
Yeah, WRIGHT. So what is happening in terms of the film after this point? I mean, we talked about the premiere, but is it going to be playing elsewhere? Are you going to try to take it to festivals? What happens next?
Pretty much, yeah, it would be going to festivals and trying to get it, sold. And, we just want eyes on it. We think it's a powerful story, and we think some people, especially some picture companies, might be interested.
Yeah.
So potentially on a nice streaming platform or on the silver screen. Who
And
knows?
yeah, and so Sydney, what for the film crew is next? Are you all just on to the next thing? I know you do a lot of other kinds of cinematography and commercial work and media work. Is this just something that's done and in the can, or are you tackling any kind of documentaries ahead?
Well, we have some ideas in the works, but that's kind of all we have at the moment. We do really want to focus on this right now and get it out and get people to watch it. And then we'll focus on the next thing when we're done.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. It is I'm sure just a great feeling of accomplishment to have gotten this out there into the world. And And I appreciate it. I'm glad that UNF is going to be able to show it. So Santiago Triana, Sydney Strymer, JC Dara Downing, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Up next, a new arts collective unveils its inaugural lineup. We preview season 0.
Congaree and Pen, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpen.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Highway, hospital, home, work. Where injuries happen can make a difference in the law and the outcome.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
National Theater Live presents A Streetcar Named Desire. Gillian Anderson, Vanessa Kirby, and Ben Foster lead the cast in Tennessee Williams' timeless masterpiece. From visionary director Benedict Andrews, this acclaimed production was filmed during a sold-out run at the Young Vic Theater in 2014. Wednesday, January 14th at WJCT Studios. Popcorn and cash bar available. Doors open at 6:30. Film starts at 7. Go to wjct.org/film for tickets.
James Clyburn is one of the most influential Democrats in Congress. He was working on a book about the 8 black congressmen from South Carolina who preceded him. Then January 6th happened.
The book had to be about more than those 8 people, but had to really sound an alarm because I recognized what was happening.
James Clyburn on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
It was a common story in 2025. The Trump administration announced a new policy on immigration enforcement, the federal workforce, tariffs, or using the National Guard, and then spent months defending the legality of its moves in court. What's happened with these hundreds of lawsuits, and which cases are still undecided? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, from the music of Britney Spears to the sounds of Motown, a new theater group pulls back the curtain on its inaugural season. Here to tell us about what they're calling Season 0 is Lee Hamby, co-artistic director of the Arts Collective Theater. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning.
Congrats on the new collective.
Thank you so much.
It's exciting. So tell us, first of all, you've been in theater for a long time.
Don't remind me.
Well, at least a couple decades.
Yes,
and
yes.
You are a known entity around these parts. You were former director at ABET and Five and Dime Theater. What did you think was missing from the local theater scene that prompted you to want to create this new collective?
I think a lot of other theaters are concentrating on more known things and family-friendly things, which we need, desperately. I think we're missing that element of fun and wacky. And because I love that, and I know we've had great response to it in the past for the other theaters. So I think without having being scared of the material that you do. Everybody wants to sell tickets. We all want to sell tickets, but we want to also teach people what they need to see and want to see. People only know what they've already seen.
Right.
They don't know what they haven't seen.
And art should be challenging, right?
Correct.
So the idea behind this is to sort of be somewhat driven by the members, the collective, the artists who are participating. Who is going to be participating? Who are you going to be drawing from? And what are you going to ask of them? What should they be bringing to the project?
So we're not going to just concentrate on producing a full season of shows ourselves. So a lot of those things, we'll do like 3 or 4 shows a season, and then everything else will be locally driven with, comedy or film. We are able to have film in that space because we have a giant LED panel that's going to be on the back of the stage wall. And so we can bring in films, cabaret, anything and everything we're looking for. So if you have talent, reach out to us.
And so you've been renovating this space. Tell us where it is. We have a couple of pictures of the in process. So it's not what it's ultimately going to look like.
Right. So it's a building. If you grew up in Jacksonville, if you drive down Beach Boulevard, I know myself have always looked at this building going, that's the coolest building ever. And it became available and we jumped on it.
What is it?
It is 6701 Beach Boulevard. It used to be a home sound company, but like right before we bought it, it was a mix of things. It was doctors' offices. It was a church. There was a car dealer in there. So
that's so peak Jacksonville, just kind of the history of a building like that being so varied and diverse,
But it's like 1970s, mid-century. It's 2-story. It's really, really cool. So I'm proud to have that building.
And so we mentioned that it's season 0 and you are announcing basically what is on deck. So what are the shows that you're already planning?
So first we're going to open with Victor Victoria, which everybody probably knows, the Julie Andrews film that was also made into a musical on Broadway in the 90s, which I got to see with Julie Andrews.
Wow.
And then Liza Minnelli took over for her, so I saw those. And then we're going to do a Cinderella tale told with Britney Spears music, which is called Once Upon a One More Time. And then we close the season for Christmas with Season of Soul, which is something that I've created that will celebrate R&B, gospel, blues, all holiday classics retold in those kinds of ways, through dance, spoken word, all kinds of things.
And so your invitation for people to get involved is predicated on a pretty interesting approach to auditions, which I think you've put out there as like, we all have limited time and resources. So what is it that you're doing that's different about the audition process?
So we're taking ongoing audition submissions, so video submissions. So you just have to send in once, and then we will do the rest. We will keep you in a file, and we will always look through our files for every show. So if you don't send in your things, we don't know about you. That's the kind of approach we're looking for. And we want to take the nerves out of the process. A lot of people get so nervous they don't want to come to an audition because the in-person process is nerve-wracking. So can the video process, but it takes the people watching you out of it. Don't question yourselves. Let us make the decision whether you're talented or not. We all question ourselves. No matter what the experience we have, we always have that imposter syndrome.
But this basically removes this show-by-show individual auditions and requiring you to sort of put yourself out for each show. You can basically be under consideration for any and all productions.
Absolutely. We want to take I'm too old, I don't have enough experience, I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm too that. Takes all of that out of that. Let us make that decision for you.
Yeah.
You might not see yourself in a certain role, but we see you in that role,
And you are also committed to sort of diverse casting and, exploring different ways of presenting characters.
There's so many shows out there that are able to be told in different ways with different kinds of people. Just because the script and the original production was a certain way doesn't mean that everything has to be that way and kept that way.
So if people are interested in either getting tickets when you officially open or learning more about it, where can they go?
artscollectivetheater.com. Also, our Facebook and Instagram page is very active. We share lots of things there. Audition notice just went out. We are starting on Sunday, January 11th will be the first day of submission date. There'll be lots of information online for you to submit. So please look for that. We want anybody of all talent, any genre, anything.
All right. Lee Hamby, great to talk to you. Thanks so much for being here.
Good to see you.
And join us tomorrow when our panel of journalists discuss the week's biggest headlines, including Governor DeSantis.
Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com.
Dependable, intelligent, local. WJCT News 89.9, where Jacksonville turns for trusted news and insight every morning.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.